And we are now recording. And the live stream has started. You could start now, Mayor Swain.
Sure, I'm just moving myself around on the screen, or my screen, because there's a little thing that drops down and it covers my buttons. So, okay. So I'm just calling back to order this regular meeting of council, just noting the time is 7:02. Councillor Proctor is joining the meeting. First, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the unceded traditional territory of the Stanawas First Nation. Before we get our meeting underway, I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge that Director Slater, this is, I believe, her last meeting with us. So I just wanted to thank her for her years of service with the District of Lantzville and providing excellent financial support for our municipality. And I wish you all the best in your future endeavors up the hill at the RDM.
Oh, thank you very much for that. That was very nice. I've very much enjoyed working with all of you, and I'm going to miss you all a lot.
Thank you. So first on our agenda is, sorry, I gotta flip my page. So we have the start of our consent agenda. So the recommendations listed for items 7A and B in the consent agenda be approved. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Gusselbrecht. Sorry, there's no discussion. Just call the question. All those in favor? Okay. Actually, Councillor Savage, I don't have you on. Oh, there you are. In favor? Okay. So you're opposed to the consent agenda? Oh, he can't hear. Okay. So we'll give Councillor Savage a moment to correct his technical difficulties. Okay, Councillor Savage, can you hear us now? Sorry about the delay, a little technical difficulty here. I'm just happy it's not me, so. Okay, Councillor Savage, any luck? Through to staff, perhaps maybe we just do the old-fashioned telephone with Councillor Savage.
I can phone you, Councillor Savage.
There we go. Okay, Councillor Savage, are you with us?
Councillor Savage, you're on mute.
You're on the speakerphone now. Can council hear Councillor Savage? Could you speak, Councillor Savage?
Yeah.
Oh, that is awful. Oh, man.
All right, can you hear me now?
Sure can. Whatever
Oh, okay.
it worked. Okay, so let's move on before we lose that. So we're just voting on the consent agenda. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. That takes us on to public input. So through to staff, any members of the public to speak this evening? Okay, hearing nothing from staff.
No, actually, yes, we do have a member of the public. Sorry, it just took me a little while to get across the room.
Okay, sure, no worries.
We have Marina Hawkswood,
Okay.
who would like to speak about the DVP on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, there she is.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, so if you can just state your name and address for the record, please, and then you
Sure, it's Marina Hawkswood and I live at 7354 Venture Road.
Yeah, you can go.
Okay, am I on video or just audio?
Audio at the moment.
Just on audio, okay. And of course, my phone is ringing now. Just hold on one moment.
We can.
Sorry about that. Yes, so in a nutshell, we are looking to rebuild a shed that was damaged by a tree falling on it about 2 Januaries ago. And it is basically just a small garage that sits on Venture Road in between 2 other structures. Our neighbors both have the same structure. It's like a pan abode that must have been built in the 50s or 60s. And we're just looking to rebuild it.
Okay. Is there anything further, or does that conclude your remarks?
Well, I could just explain that the reason we do not want to build it where the setbacks are is because there's a large, beautiful cedar tree that we are trying to protect. That's about 150 years old. It's right in the center of the property and it would impinge on any buildings around it, the root system or the canopy of the tree. And yeah, that's basically the reason we want to put the garage or shed back where it was. We also have 2 letters of support from our neighbors who don't have any issues with the plan. And I think you guys have the package there that has the survey and the letter from our architect as well. That's everything.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that's coming up on our agenda here shortly enough. So under an item 9C. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on in our agenda. So we're on to legislative matters. So under bylaw, sorry, this is 9A, bylaw number 271. I'll just simply make the motion that the 2021 to 2025 financial plan bylaw number 261, 2020 amendment bylaw number 271, 2021 be given first, second, and third readings. So I have a seconder to that, second by Councillor Kesselbrock. Any discussion? So through myself as the mover, I have nothing. Councillor Kesselbrock. Okay, and then to the rest of the council, I see Councillor Savage wishing to speak. So go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, am I unmuted now, please?
You are, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I guess I'll have to stay unmuted for the meeting just because the setup here, I can't see anything either, so hopefully I will not miss the presentation of the beach road ends. But so anyway, my comments on this is, again, unfortunately, I can't support it, and it's important the reasons why. The problem I see with this is since our term started, the compounded tax increase is 41.48%. And that's an awfully big tax increase for 3 years. And the compounded tax increase simply means the tax increase each year also applies to the previous year's tax increase. So if you start with $100 and apply a 10% increase, that's $110. If then you apply a 20% increase on $110, that's $132. So the original $100 has become $132. That's a 32% increase. And it's the same with this compounding of the tax increases. So this year's 7.66 tax increase is actually more when applied to the 19.9 tax increase of last year. That gives a 21.4%. So the 19.9% tax increase of last year becomes a 21.4% this year due to compounding. And that the 9.6% tax increase of 2019 became 11.5% in 2020 and became 12.4% in 2021. I'm just pointing out, if we keep going with these tax increases, the compounding effect is heavy dollars, more and more every year for residents. So, and much of this big compounded 41.48 tax increase over 3 years is due to new staffing. And the new deputy finance position is $90,000 per year, which is a 3.9% tax increase on the way it's worked out this year. So the whole amount won't show up in 2021 because there's a COVID grant covering part of the hiring, and it's also being done partway through the year. So we're not seeing the whole increase this year. We will next year. So in 20 and 21 budgets, $387,000 for new staffing. That's a 16.83% permanent tax increase. That's $1.16 million every 3 years. Plus there's $30,000 for a building inspector whose cost will likely be covered by inspection fees. Plus this year there's $60,000 for a PR information person. The COVID grant covers the first year, but grants are also tax dollars. So there's more tax dollars being spent, plus $27,000 for a planning assistant, funded by a COVID grant, but once again, tax dollars. And further problem is in 2022, 90,000 for another planning position. And for 2023, another $80,000 is slated for a public works technician. So that would leave a grand total of new staff cost increases of $557,000, 24.2 permanent tax increase, plus the 30,000 building inspector, the 60,000 information person, and the $27,000 planning assistant for this year. So that's why I can't support it. It's just in these COVID times where the GDP is predicted to be a 5.6% decrease for 2020, it's just not the right time to be spending all this money. And I had a quick question to staff, if I may, please. And it's got reference to changing funding here from the Parkland Capital Infrastructure Reserve to gas tax for the 90,000 Copley Park equipment. My question is, can the same be done for beach road end improvements for recreation? Can it also be funded from this gas tax recreation infrastructure category?
Sorry, through the chair to you, Councillor Savage. Unfortunately, we can't use the gas tax for the Beach Road Ends project because it doesn't quite meet the capital asset threshold. If the project's size and scope, was over that $10,000 threshold, and it could meet the capital requirements, then we could. But right now, as it stands, it's an operating project, so it can't.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. So what has to happen for it to qualify? The capital amount has to be bigger?
Yeah, our tangible capital asset policy right now outlines that $10,000 is the threshold for a capital asset, for an asset to be capitalized. But it depends on the type of improvements that you do at the beach road end. So depending on what type of improvements they do, like if it's a mix of benches and trees and things like that, normally in order to capitalize something, it needs to be, individually at that $10,000 threshold. Right now, based on what's in the financial plan, we've got $9,800, but for everything all told together. So it's an operating project as opposed to a capital project.
I understand. So it would have to be.
Yeah, Councillor Savage, I'm going to interrupt you there. Unless there's any specific follow-up with respect to that, you're over your 5 minutes, and I was going to move on to another speaker. You can always come back when we.
Thank you.
If there's anything further to follow up with Director Slater, I'm assuming not. Okay, so Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that when we get grant money from the provincial government, it is tax money. The provincial government taxes people and uses that tax money as they decide. But if they've set up a program for municipalities to apply for grants and we don't apply to receive the grant money, then it goes to other communities and the people's taxes doesn't change. So when we apply for grants, it's a smart way for us to get money. It is indeed tax money, but everyone in Lantzville is going to pay the same amount of tax if we get the grant in Lantzville, or if we don't apply for it and the money all goes to Qualicum, your taxes are going to be the same. So it's actually very clever for staff to apply for grants. Thank you.
Okay, additional speakers, first-time speakers. I'll just briefly speak to this. I appreciate the math Councillor Savage has done on this. Yes, the compounding of the interest, or the tax increases is definitely significant. However, we just to kind of jump back a few months now, as we do our budgeting a lot earlier in the year, and then it comes to this point in the year we're budgeting to do the final approval, we sometimes lose sight of where we came from, and we have had a significant paring down of the taxes for this year. So we didn't start at 8% and just only reduce it to 7%. I can't even remember the final number or we had originally started with, but it was over 20%, I believe,
and now we've pared it all the way down to where it is. So again, I commend our staff and council for getting it to where it is now. And, it's not ideal, but, we have a lot of lofty goals that we want to try and accomplish in Lantzville, and that requires taxation. And I don't think we're being reckless about it, but it is. I do keep my eye on the compound tax increase as well, and I'm mindful of it, and I'm not pleased of the number. However, it is. We are basically trying to do things, and you can't do that without money. So if people don't want us to do things in Lantzville, then that makes our lives a lot easier. We don't do anything, but I don't think that's the flavor of the day. So through to the rest of the council, first time speakers. Okay, hearing none, I'll move to second time speakers, and then I'll be calling the question. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move to call into question. So first three readings, all those in favor? Opposed? Noting that Councillor Savage is opposed, first three readings carry. Now we're on to the 2021 to 2025 financial plan bylaw number 261, 2020 amendment bylaw number 271, 2021 be adopted. Do I have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Gusselbrock. I'm just moving to calling the questions. All those in favor and opposed? Noting that Councillor Savage is opposed, the bylaw is adopted. So that takes us on to item 9B of our agenda. So this is the 2020 Statement of Financial Information, otherwise known as the SOFI report. So I'll make the motion that the 2020 Statement of Financial Information be approved. Do I have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Gusselbrock. Any discussion? So through as the mover, nothing for me to add. Through to the seconder, Councillor Gusselbrock, nothing. And first time speaker, so Councillor Savage, I saw your hand go up. Go ahead.
Yes, quick comment, please. I was on the incorporation committee back near the turn of the century, and a provincial government expert estimated our administration costs at, I believe, around $465,000 they projected they would be if we incorporated. And now the SOFI report shows remuneration of staff employees has reached $1,306,766, with about the same population as it was in 2003. And of course, that will increase next year with new hirings this year. So as we've seen, new development like Clark Med produces not much in net tax income and nowhere near enough to cover these big increases of staffing. So the burden will fall to current taxpayers. So I only bring that up to underline what I found the key point in the SOFA report. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Proctor.
I just wanted to speak to the incorporation and the consultant that spoke to us. I think that everyone in Lantzville was misled with what would happen when we became incorporated. We wanted to be our own entity, but we were not well educated on what it was going to cost and what it was going to take to run a municipality. And I think that is now common knowledge, and that consultant was obviously very wrong because we know that we are understaffed and our staff is overworked. So it's unfortunate that we didn't, as a municipality, become better educated before we voted on that issue. But the fact is, you can't be just a little bit pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant. You're incorporated or you're not. And when we became incorporated, we took on a big, huge job that cost a lot of money. Thank you.
Okay, additional speakers. Actually, I see Director Slater, your hand is up.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Swain. I just wanted to point out just one point of clarification. The $1.3 million of total remuneration does include all of the employees. So that's everybody that's employed by the District of Lantzville. So it would include Public Works, It includes fire, it includes bylaws, all of those things. It's not just administration.
Okay.
But that's all I wanted to point out.
Okay. Any additional speakers? And I'm going to call the question. Okay, seeing none, moving to call any questions. So all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's carried unanimously. That takes us on to item 9C. So we have the development variance permit application for 7360 Venture Road. Some are prepared to make that motion. Okay, so Councillor Proctor.
That development variance permit number DVP 21-2 for 7360 Venture Road be amended by replacing 9.9 meters to 0.38 meters with 9.9 meters to 6 meters. And further, that development variance permit number DVP 21-2 for 7360 Venture Road as amended be issued to Jonathan Hawksworth and Mariana Hawksworth.
Okay, do I have a seconder to that? Okay, seconded. Okay, I almost said it myself, but second by Councillor Gusselbrock. Discussion on the motion. So through to Councillor Proctor as mover, and then Councillor Gusselbrock, seconder.
I think this development variance permit is totally reasonable. They're replacing a building that was previously in the same spot, and it matches up with all the other buildings when you go up and down that street. So I see no reason why we couldn't grant this variance.
Okay, and Councillor Gusselbrock.
Yes, I heard Mrs. Hawkswood's mention something about a cedar tree, but I don't see anything about that in the materials. It's a lovely spot on Venture Road, all the properties. So through to staff, I noticed that the staff report recommends that the variance only be from 9.9 meters to 6 meters rather than to 0.38. And perhaps Director Young can reinforce for us tonight why he's recommending that.
Through the mayor to Councilor Gusselbrock, the simple answer to that is that the property is approximately 1/3 of an acre in area. There's lots of space on the property that a 360 square foot building could be located. There's in staff's view, we're just really unable to support it since there are other suitable locations for that building. There's nothing about the property that poses any type of hardship or encumbrance that would prevent the owners from complying with the setbacks. What we are supportive of is we do not anticipate that Venture Road will be widened out. We do support setting aside that future ultimate highway dedication, the additional setback that would be required for that, and reducing the setback from 9.9 meters down to 6 meters.
I'm looking at the attachment number 2 on page 29 of the, can you hear me? Yeah. And I'm trying, because Mrs. Hawkswood talked about that this proposed structure would be in between 2 other structures. And are those structures that she's referring to, are those more or less 0.38 meters from the proposed setback, or not setback, but the road?
Through the mayor to Councilor Gusselbrock, that's correct. You can actually see them on page 32 and 33 of the agenda. So the owner has supplied photos of the structures on the 2 adjoining properties.
So, follow-up question. Are all of those structures, including the fences, are they impinging on the road right away?
Through the mayor to Councilor Gesselbrock, we don't know if those structures are encroaching into the actual road right of way. It's possible they could be at or near the property line, but since we don't have surveyors, there's no way to verify if they're actually over the private property into the public road right of way.
Right. You know, it's unfortunate the tree fell. It's a problem with 110-foot trees when there's not a lot of supporting. But is it going to make a difference if everybody else's property is, you know, right up abutting on the road right away? And I'm looking at page 32, the picture, because we did, council did vote to pave Venture Road because it's sort of a connecting road between Peterson and Sebastian. So as loath as I am to go against a staff recommendation, in this case, it looks like historically, all these buildings, including the proposed, are right up to the road. I don't see what harm would be to approve that. So once again, through to Director Young, would there be some irreparable harm to the district in allowing the 0.38 meters?
Through the mayor to Councilor Gesselbrock, the answer to that is no. As we've said in the staff report, we do not anticipate that there will be any impacts associated with the request to reduce the setback from 9.9 to 0.38 meters. I really think that the photo on page 31 best illustrates why staff are simply not able to support this, despite the fact that there's no impacts associated with the requested variance. The photo clearly demonstrates that there is sufficient space on the property to simply set the structure back to 6 meters. And since there is sufficient space, staff are not able to support it.
Thank you.
Okay, additional questions, debate from council? Okay, I see Councilor Savage, go ahead.
Thank you. This is the way I see it. I would keep it at it's almost a 0 setback, a little bit pinch more than that. And the reason for that, it's to keep the old Lantzville feel, that character on that road. It's really a classic road. It's narrower than other roads, the right of way. And it harkens to some of the Victoria roads that are very narrow laneways with trees right coming to the edge of the road. And I remember in the old days that these laneways would have garages facing the lane right up to the lane. And I find that other properties on Venture, has been noted, they have the garages coming right to the roadside. So it would be in keeping with that too. And now it allows more room on the property for nature and ocean ecosystems. And this is very important on waterfront properties, especially on a bluff regards erosion. Runoff from the garage roof should be as far back from the waterfront as possible. And this should be a consideration for future waterfront builds. The space between buildings and the foreshore should be maximized, so there's potential for a future owner to restore some of the foreshore ecosystems adjacent to the foreshore. And in this case, there's beautiful old firs on the property. And I know that cedar tree, it would be very close to the new garage if it was forced to go in 20 feet. And 6 meters is almost 20 feet. So, so I would say the same approach should be taken at Venture Road. Leave the possibility of as much of an ecosystem as you can get there. So This garage will ensure Venture stays, the lane looks and stays the same. So there is this option being talked about of leaving space so that in the future, if the road right of way wants to be expanded, well, I would prefer to have things to make sure it's not expanded, to keep it a narrower road right of way, like a lane. And so at any rate, I'd like to see it as it is. And I think the residents on the road know better than anyone, sort of the feel of it. And we've got letters from neighbors apparently that aren't objecting to it. They support it. So I think it makes sense. I've seen the property and it makes sense to have the garage as close to the road as possible to leave the nice green space that they have between them and the foreshore. So that would be my point of view, to support what the what's requested by the owners. Thank you.
Any additional first-time speakers? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to second-time speakers if anybody wishes. Okay, so basically,
just through the council, obviously, if we vote in favor of this, then we're supporting the staff recommendation of basically having the setback as 6 meters. So if you're not in support of that, then it'd be recommended to vote against this motion, and then someone would have to be prepared to make a subsequent motion. Okay. So I'm going to call the question. So did you have a question, Councillor Gaspard? Yeah, go ahead.
Wouldn't it be easier just to amend this motion and just to remove the wording, be amended by replacing 9 point? Could we simply amend?
I think it would be opposite to what the motion is. So you're better to vote on this one and then move on to alternative number 1.
Yeah, so that would be my recommendation to council. It's just cleaner.
Thank you.
In terms of just voting and so forth. So I'm going to call the question on this item. So all those in favor? Okay, and then opposed? Okay, so as unanimously opposed, the motion fails. So is someone prepared to read the alternate motion? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Gusselbrock.
That development variance permit number DVP 21-2 for 7360 Venture Road be issued to Jonathan Hawkswood and Marina Hawkswood.
Okay, and do we have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Savage. Okay, discussion on the motion. I think we've already had probably enough discussion, but unless somebody feels that there's new information to add, I'm inclined to call the question. Okay, seeing that there's no new information, I will call the question. So all those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Okay. All right, so that takes us on to item 10A of our agenda.
Sorry, as a point of order, please.
Yes, what's your point of order?
Yeah, I just had my hand up to ask about the motion. Does that mean that we gave them what they had requested?
Okay, yes, I believe so.
Thank you.
Director Young, if you could just confirm that.
That's
I
correct.
think Councillor Gesselbrecht, you have to hit your mute too, please. Okay, so and I think all the council heard that the applicants basically got what they asked for. Okay.
Yep.
Good. All right, so that takes us on to item 10A. So we have Beach Road and Designs. So we have a PowerPoint presentation by the district's consultant, Vancouver Island University's Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere Region Research Institute. I feel at this point it'd be appropriate to have Director Young introduce the presenters, and then the floor is theirs. So if you may wish, Director Young.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think as I did before, I'll let the speakers introduce themselves, but just a short background. So earlier this year, the district engaged VIU to undertake a planning engagement and design process for the beach road ends in Lantzville. And the first step was the public engagement piece, which was completed. So there was a community-wide survey that was undertaken. The results of that were presented at a previous council meeting. And then this next and final step was to develop 2 concept designs for Harper Road and Lavender Road, as well as develop management policies for the 12 beach road ends.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Is my audio okay? Okay, cool. So I'm Ash. I'm from the Mabry team from VIU. And I'm gonna start off by presenting the designs, and then Laura will take over and present the policy document. And let's see if I can share my screen. Yes. All right. So we're gonna talk about the design interventions that we came up with, and they're based off of internal research and the comments that we gathered from the survey and the online forum. Okay. So the context analysis and the environmental analysis we already talked about last meeting, so I'm going to skip over that. I'm going to start with the Harper Road end. So what we gathered from the community engagement, the high priority interventions were protecting the beach end from further deterioration and erosion caused due to sea level rise, improving drainage at the bottom of the beach end, making the public place safer, and improving and regulating parking on site. The amenities that public asked for were regarding mobility, just improving walkability and bike racks. We discovered that most people actually walk to the beach end, and the second highest way to get to the beach end was through cars. And with recreation, people wanted maybe a kayak paddle launch. The slope from the beach end to the beach is actually quite minor, so it's used by kids or people who want to launch their kayaks. It's very people usually use that for, so that's something that they wanted. And people also wanted a green space where they could picnic or maybe their kids could play. And recycling bin was also one of the highest comments. It was a repetitive comment amongst all the beach ends. So, okay. So this is the plan in its entirety, and I'm going to take you through it one by one. So the biggest problem with Harper is obviously the ditch that forms at the bottom during winter months. And in order to address that, we did a bunch of things. So first of all, our approach was to reinforce the beach end with the green shore approach. And what we did in this beach end, similar to what the district has done in Sebastian, we blocked the vehicular access right before the ditch. We understood that there's historical mines, but because of the heavy vehicles going in and out through the year, it's further deteriorating the beach end. So the first thing we did was to block off the vehicular access and sort of create a green space. We also planted native plants and trees on both sides and the kind of plants that would actually hold the water better. And we also installed a culvert, and we proposed that the culvert the water should be drained by making a gradual slope towards the ocean and giving it an outlet there. So once we have established a green space, there's actually a lot of area there, and this beach end has a lot of potential to be further developed for future use. Just an example, we installed a picnic bench. We also proposed that some kind of kids play area, if that's something the district wants to do in phase 2, that's something that can be explored. And we installed a recycling bin right by where the normal garbage bin is. We introduced a loading zone. So the parking is now only on the right side. And we also installed a sidewalk that goes all the way to the beach where the vehicles stop. And there's an accessible parking spot as close to the vehicular stop as possible. So traffic calming measure a speed bump before both the accesses of the private properties. People usually drive really fast to the end of the beach end. So that was a point in the survey. So we addressed it that way. And that's it for Harper. I'm going to go to Lavender, and I'm gonna pause after I'm done with design, so you can ask me questions. So with Lavender, well, the first point was so many people commented that to not make it like Sebastian. And since we were already proposing cutting off vehicular access before with Harper as well, we sort of compromised on that. So high priority interventions for this point was, seawall erosion. Lack of safety was a point that was raised by adjacent property owners. The ramp that's currently there is in pretty bad shape. And one of the biggest point was, so there's a sewer station here, and then there's a water pump here as well. So if a car is blocking this point, emergency vehicles can't get to the pump, and that was a huge issue as well. And then with mobility, improving walkability, installing bike racks, and traffic calming measures, similar points to Harper. And people really wanted us to address the deteriorating ramp. And recycling bin was the same comment as Harper. So in order to compromise and maybe provide maybe one car access, that's what we tried to do. We spoke to district, and the district is actually, I think there's an engineering report, if Kyle could correct me, we did have a discussion about that, but then they don't really want to allow vehicular cars beyond this point. But in order to sort of make a compromise, we did allow for one accessible spot at the very end. But other than that, all the vehicles stop at this point, and we have added a loading zone so people can unload their kayaks and walk to this point. We have also installed bollards, so these bollards can be unlocked by keys. So if an emergency vehicle wants to go to this point, access the pump, they can still do it. We have installed bike racks and a sidewalk. And so there's regarding this area, so this is a very nice landscape area that already exists, and it has been taken care by property owners in this property. But people don't really know, because there's a huge chunk of landscape. People don't really know that it's a public space, and that was a comment that somebody did bring up in the survey, that we don't really know if it's a public space or not. So in order to open the space up and actually use the space, we propose that removing the existing landscape from here and actually shifting it back to the property line, so the property owners have more privacy, they have more barrier from noise pollution, and we can actually really use this green space. The district will have to level it. There are a bunch of levels here that's not really safe. There's like a bunch of DIY staircases here that's not really safe to access right now. But if we can match the slope of the road, I don't think there should be a problem. We can even install a picnic bench, and we can install another bench that's facing the ocean. So these seating spaces are actually a little bit protected from the wind, because they're not exactly like right at the beach. So I think this would be a nice installation. So that's it for the design interventions. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Ash, did you want to just stop the screen share for a bit?
Sure.
Yeah, I just found myself. So yeah, thank you for your presentation. And thank you for stopping your screen share as well. So through to council, are there questions for the presenters? So we have Councillor Savage. Okay, so go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. With Harper Road, how far back does that green go approximately? I couldn't really see the design on the screen at all.
So basically, when you're driving down Harper, when you lose sight of the when you kind of turn, there's a slight bend in the road that turns right, heading into the gravel parking lot, kind of road end. That's where we block the traffic to. So it would turn just before the right-hand turn into the lot.
Yeah, like 10 meters. If you turn just at the turn 10 meters from that point, that's where the green space starts. It's right where the ditch is. So we stopped it right before the ditch, so it doesn't, like, the vehicles don't go through and cause further deterioration.
Yeah, so my comment on that one, it looks like there's not much parking. And I think in the survey, parking was the #1 issue. And I've noticed two styles of parking there. One is where people just mush in haphazardly, but the maximum type of parking is where they turn left and park perpendicular to that edge. And you can get quite a few in there. As much as I love green space, but it seems like it's less parking than there is now. And with Lavender, same thing. You've got about 4 spaces, it looks like. Whereas a previous plan had about 8, 9 spaces perpendicular towards the blackberry bushes there. And it also appears with Lavender, there's more asphalt than there was previously. So just wondering if you can speak to that. The idea was to make it a nice wide green space at the bottom there. So if you could speak to that, please. Just why it's so car oriented at the bottom there, but there's only 1 parking spot, yet it's all open for vehicles instead of green and pedestrians and so on. Thank you.
Was that the comment about Lavender, that it's more
Yes.
car oriented in Lavender? So
Yeah.
initially we tried to fit in more parking spots at the front because there was a repetitive comment that please don't, stop the vehicular access there. People really enjoy sitting in their car and, looking at the ocean. And there's actually like a private access to the right. Maybe I can explain this better if I share my screen again. Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah.
So over here, there's actually a private access. We tried to fit in 2 cars here, but that was not going to be possible. And we can't, and if we wanted to go other way, say put in 2 cars here, we still can't do it because this access can't be blocked. So realistically, legally, there's only spot for 1 car.
Yeah,
And
sorry, your screen just came up now because I'm on delay here. If you could
okay.
start again, please. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So there's the adjacent property owner has vehicular access. They have a gate here, so we actually cannot let anyone park close to the gate. And we needed to provide, like, keep the access to the ramp clear as well. So realistically, there could only be 1 spot. I know more than 1 people park, like 2 or 3 cars are parked there on any given day, but it's not ideal. We also wanted to introduce a no parking sign here and move and like a 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. parking sign maybe here, but like only 1 car can park. And the mandate of the district, like Kyle can correct me, but from what we understood, that district actually does not want any more cars going beyond this point. This is just, you can say, the first draft of a design concept. Further revisions will be made to that, but ideally not more than 1 car. It's not really asphalt, it's just gravel. We're not the only asphalt, I think, gravel, if you can correct me here. We are just making the sidewalk, but we're gonna keep the existing, whatever there is, we're not gonna change it. Repairing the ramp is one of the key points too, but we're not really introducing any more asphalt here.
Yes, could you tell me, please? I don't understand what all that white is. You've got a semicircle there, but what is all that white? Is that just gravel, asphalt? All where the car is there, you've got a semicircle.
It's just gravel. It's just whatever is there right now. We are not introducing like further concreting. We're just gonna, yeah.
Sorry to jump in. The semicircle is the turning radius for vehicles.
Yeah,
so that's a calculation that's showing the turning radius needed for that vehicle to back out appropriately. And like Ashwara was saying, to the right of the 1 vehicle that's on the beach road end, which is a gravel road end, there is a secondary right of way to the adjacent homeowner that's been in place longstanding that I don't think can be withdrawn. To your point, Councillor Savage, there is a way to create more parking if you were to do angle parking or perpendicular 90-degree parking, which you alluded to. We did take into account for that, and you know, when we were there on site each time, the people that we talked to at the road end in their car were not from Lantzville, and I think that the plans we did tried to cater to Lantzville without catering to everybody else who's not a resident of Lantzville. I think that you know, we want to cater exactly to what the resident population survey said, but I think that too much parking right adjacent to road ends is taking away too many opportunities for Lantzville residents to utilize the space themselves and have that access on a, you know, more walkable community level than having to drive down. I think with this plan, because there's a lot of access at the top of the property too, and Ash didn't, maybe skipped over it, but around the rectangular hedge line that you see there, which is the power, the fencing covered up. Behind there, there's some pretty large trees that we did recommend removing to ensure that the top portion, the green space above to the south there, still gets most views of the ocean. So it's not a 360 or not 180 degree, but it's still a pretty significant view. And I think that that's usable there as well. So hopefully it'll draw more pedestrian traffic to site. The easiest way, the simplest, easiest way to get more parking in is to have an angled or completely perpendicular parking where those 3 cars are. That Ashwar is kind of scrolling over right now, and it's 100% possible. You could probably fit 5 or 6 there instead of 3 if you did go that route. Again, though, the plan is to turn at the bottom and park facing up. So you still need behind the single car that is parked there for accessible access for both the boat ramp or for the beach access. You still need that turning radius if you flip that semicircle the other way to turn and head back up the road to park in the correct direction.
Yeah, I guess my final comment would be that's a lot of green space gone just for 1 car. And with that gate at the back of that fellow's property, it's not accessed that often. And certainly they could drive over grass to access it, and ditto, because we have so many other road ends where you can park right at the ocean. But the idea, I think, of this one was to have green at the bottom. So it's a nice big green space, but you can get lawn mats and sand and so on. So it's quite easy to drive over lawn. But is that possible to have green at the bottom where it would be accessible for the fellow with the gate to occasionally enter his gate, and then for cars, they could park a little further back, and you can still see the ocean from there, having one spot further back where the other cars, you know, a little further down from where the other cars are. Is that possible?
I certainly believe that having green space down there is possible. And when I looked at the fence and the right of way and looked in there, it didn't look like it had never been driven over. But again, you know, as we talked to staff, it has been utilized before in the past, and it is an agreement in place. So if there's, you know, if there's an appetite for a change there, we can certainly rework part of this plan.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your time.
Okay, I just have a couple of comments myself. I can't really see all of council, but if you could perhaps stop the screen share again, please, that'd be appreciated. My comments, you know, are centered around parking. And the one thing, you know, we sometimes talk about having visitors to Lantzville. Well, you know, the one thing we got to keep in mind is I'm sure residents of Lantzville visit other places as well. And, you know, and we sure appreciate having parking spots near areas that we like to recreate outside of our community. The other thing to definitely take into consideration here is Lantzville is a growing community. We've had a recent development application, or zoning and OCP amendments on a development application for 250 dwelling units across the highway. We also have a growing foothills subdivision, and there's going to be other areas that will be growing as well within Lantzville, and are all on the other side of the highway. And the practicality of walking, cycling, rollerblading, or whatever down to the beach, in my opinion, really isn't that practical. So, I think we do need to try and strive towards trying to create as much parking within reason. And I think, the solution that's already being tabled in terms of the angled parking at Lavender, even increasing it to 5 or 6 stalls would be quite reasonable, but leaving it as 3, that might be a tough one to sell to our residents here in Lantzville. And even with the Harper Road, again, kind of closing off the whole bottom of that road end and not allowing people to really pull up and park and look out, even on those rainy days and storm watching and so forth. And again, keeping in mind, we are a growing community and we have to look to the future. Again, I don't think I'd really be supporting closing off that road end entirely. Parking is a key thing, and we have to look at people as they age and mobility restrictions and so on. Some people just simply can't leave their cars, and they may be visitors to Lantzville, they may be Lantzville residents, but the way I look at it is, beach road ends are public spaces, and we should be inviting the public to enjoy them. So those are just my thoughts. But otherwise, I do like the design at Lavender. It's the turning radius and so on. That's great, and having the parking angle. So you're pointing up the hill. The one thing is I'll briefly comment on is if you go down to Lavender, it is a well-used beach road end. And, I think there's even been comments by residents down there stating how well used it is. So but the one thing I will say is the parking down there on the best of days is chaotic. And so anything we can do to kind of organize that and would be a definite win in a way, because it just gets chaotic. And I don't know how many little minor fender benders occur down there, if any at all, but it's goofy down there. That's sort of the lack of, give better words for that word choice, but it's just simply goofy. So anything we can do to improve it, that would be a win. I believe Councillor Proctor, you had your hand up, and then I see Councillor Gusselbrock. No? Oh, okay. So Councillor Gusselbrock, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple things. First, thanking both of these presenters here tonight. It's a great undertaking. With respect to Lavender, Lavender has the potential to be a nice green space. People go down and either have access to the beach or sit around. It's not a nice beach for swimming. In fact, of the different road ends, or Sebastian, Harper, Jack's even, Lavender is not that nice, but it has the potential for kayak launching and to get onto the beach. A lot of people just like to walk the beach. The best area for parking and to get on, of course, is Orr Road. And that's where I go often. There's potential parking for 20 cars down there. And in my discussions with staff, that there are plans to increase that even. I noticed that Straight Road, which intersects Orr Road, that there's a lot of boulders preventing parking in front of a hedge there. And maybe staff will be addressing that in the near future. But here's my real concern is that the VIU staff has gone to a great length, or not staff, but students. They've done surveys, but I think this needs to go back to the public. I think we need to have those designs, which we saw tonight, be included in the minutes, and that those also go on the district website so that the folks who live here have a chance to see it and have a final say. So that would be my recommendation with respect to this motion here tonight, that we do exactly what I just said. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I think that you did a lovely job, and I really enjoyed it. My concern is I need to echo what Councillor Gesselbrock just said. I'm not sure what the public thinks, and I think we need some time to digest it. No, my friends and neighbors are concerned that there's not enough parking at Harper, and I'm not sure how they'd feel about taking all those places away. And everyone that I've spoken to about Lavender, they don't want the blackberries taken away. I love the idea of removing the trees and making that green space more accessible, but I think the rest of it, people may be happy with the way it is. I don't know. I need to hear from more people before I could decide on the plans. Thank you.
And just through the council, for council's benefit, basically, if we approve the motion that's in our agenda this evening, it just means that we're accepting the designs, and taking it into consideration to future decisions about those two road ends. So it doesn't, tie our hands to, these are the plans we're stuck with. It's just to take it into consideration for future design or whatever it's going to be. So, Councillor Gesselbrock, I see your hand back up again. No, or maybe it didn't get lowered. I'm not too sure. Okay, so unless there's any further questions, is there a comment, Graham?
Yeah, sorry. Actually, we had a little bit more of the presentation. Laura
Okay.
Clark with us is actually going to go through some of the policy recommendations for the other road ends, because there's another piece of the project that we haven't gone through yet. So if we have time.
Yes, go for it. This is stuff.
Okay.
And we don't have a big agenda, so go ahead.
Awesome. I will just share my screen. Okay, if everyone can see that, all right. So yeah, I would just like to present the management and improvement policy report that was created for the District of Lantzville. So every page of the document describes one of the 12 beach ends and provides general direction and policy use for each. So as well as current and future amenities, facilities, and operating guidelines. So these policies assist in the allocation of resources to achieve the dual goals of protecting and enhancing Lantzville's valuable waterfront while increasing awareness and encouraging responsible use and enjoyment. So before completing this report, the Mabry team reviewed existing policy, including Lantzville's official community plan, which we discussed at the last council meeting. So the overall goal of the beach access policy amendments and design strategies are to align with the district's OCP, and the priority is to continue to protect the shoreline as well as improve the accessibility to the Lantzville beach road ends for adjacent residents and visitors. So I just want to take you through how the report works. You might have already had a chance to review it earlier today, but as I mentioned, each road end is listed and includes a description, use policy, which is based on community engagement findings, and then it will list the current facilities, amenities, proposed facilities and amenities, and then management and maintenance for these amenities. I'm actually just gonna go a little bit closer into Orr Road. All right, so I'm just going to take you through Orr Road beach access in detail to provide an example. So Orr Road was identified as a small beach access with grass areas, seating, and ocean views. Its primary uses, according to the public survey, are walking, beachcombing, and dog walking, as well as the natural pews were also noted as a site amenity as they're used for Easter church services. So the current facilities, similar to many of the other beach ends, are the signage identifying parking and beach fire restrictions and notifying the public about the prohibited shellfish harvesting, as well as a garbage container, pet stand, 2 public benches, gravel footing to the beach, which is minimally maintained, and perpendicular beachfront parking. And then the future amenities proposed are to consider installation of a recycling bin that is clearly marked, to consider installation of bike racks to support active transportation, and determine if additional green shoring measures are required to address erosion. The reasoning behind these additional amenities for each beach end came entirely from community feedback and site visits. So then lastly, for each beach access, there is a section on maintenance and monitoring. So for Orr Road, given the current and future amenities, it includes regular monitoring and garbage recycle removal, repair, replacement, upgrading of bike racks, benches, garbage containers and recycling, and signs as needed, regular maintenance to the pet stand and resupply of dog waste bags, and lastly, regular repair and upkeep of green shoring measures to ensure effectiveness. So I just hope this quick brief provided some additional guidance on the purpose and use of the report. And I will open it up again if there's any additional feedback or questions.
Great, thank you for that. Yeah, I was wondering when we were going through the other part of your presentation, if we were going to cover that off. So thank you again for that. I'll pass it on to council. So I see Councillor Proctor, you'd like to speak, and then through the rest of council, if you wish. So go ahead, Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff, I was wondering if Director Young could explain what the next steps would be. If this plan is accepted, what are the next steps before any work takes place at the beach road ends?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Proctor, I think the mayor actually characterized it well, in that if council accepts these concepts in principle, they could be used to guide future work at those beach road ends. They are concept plans, so it doesn't mean that we're necessarily tied to that work. These are draft plans, so if council as a body wants to instruct the design team to make a particular change, for example, on Lavender Road, if you want parallel or angle parking instead of parallel parking along Lavender, you can provide that direction at this meeting, and the team will make that change, and then we bring those concepts back to council. If council does want additional public input on the concept designs, that's not necessarily within the scope of this project, so we'd have to have a discussion with the consultant about amending that contract to add that component in, which we could do potentially. But yes, the next step would be, if there are changes coming out at tonight's council meeting, the team would make those changes, and then we bring the concepts back to council at a future meeting.
So if we didn't make changes, what would happen?
The next step would be implementation. So there's a $9,800 budget for 2021 to do work this year on Harper and Lavender Road. So council would need to decide what it would like to spend that $9,800 on. There isn't a specific use for that money other than greening up the beach road ends. So council could make that decision and do that work. And staff would likely need to get costing to implement the works at either one of the beach road ends, Harper or Lavender, this year.
So if we vote to accept them the way they are, staff is going to move ahead with implementing the designs.
I think we'd have to bring a report back to council with some options. $9,800 is not a lot of money. We're not sure whether council was anticipating that volunteers would do this work, or whether we'd be hiring a contractor to do the work. But as I said, $9,800 isn't a lot of money. You'd have to decide what you're going to use that money for. Is it purchasing bike racks? Is it purchasing garbage and recycling receptacles? So like other plans that have come forward to council recently, I think a staff report on implementation and what we could use that $9,800 would be appropriate next step.
Okay, I understand now. Thank you. I do have some concerns about the lack of parking at the two beach road ends.
Any additional speakers? A couple quick comments, and then we'll go to Councillor Savage. So similar to what Councillor Gusselbrecht has indicated, you know, it's I think it would be interesting to simply post or put it on the district's website, you know, these designs and so on, and also the policies, and to, you know, advertise it. We do have a public consult, or somebody doing our public consultation now, so, or not consultation, sorry, but publicity type stuff. So I think we could probably get a little feedback just through that process that would help guide any further or future decisions around that. And in the meantime, if we want to direct staff to come back and tell us, you know, what $9,800 will get us, and if there's any additional funds, like some of the COVID restart money, if any of that can be applied to some of these beach road ends for parking improvements and so on. Anything that, you know, we can, you know, look at to maybe augment the funding to implement something that's meaningful. So if we have to pick away at it over a number of years, then so be it. But we may be able to do some of this stuff, you know, now or sooner than later. So through to Councillor Savage.
Thank you. Yes, I think just starting with Harper, that it would probably be a good idea to revise it, because I don't think it will go over well losing all that parking. And when I was there looking at it, I would say my conclusion was, I was looking at about 20 feet to 28 feet of green space at the end. Just, you know, a lawn with some native plantings, that sort of thing. Just room enough for a flat area. People can have dinner, wipe the sand off their feet, place their kayaks, unloading from the car, take them to the beach. And then I saw the rest of the road end when, as I say, when you turn left at the bottom, if you park perpendicular to that hedge, you will get in by far the most amount of parking. And that was the number one public response to Harper, was parking. And then that still leaves enough room for some parallel parking on the other side of Harper. That's the maximum way to get parking. So I think if we could agree on that, if we could just get that change done for Harper, that would go over a lot better, I think, with the public when they see the design, because you see, when you're down there, when you have such a big green space, it doesn't really add anything between the two properties. The real golden part of Harper road end is about that 20 feet, 28 feet from the foreshore is kind of the idea. I just thought I would suggest that if others agree, then at least we could make that easy change, and that maximizes the parking there. And I think on Lavender, I don't think we'll come to agreement there on the road and greening up the road end. So at the very least with Lavender, I think we should agree that that full city lot of green space that goes right to the ocean, at least start with that. We can't access it now. We shouldn't be inviting people on there now. It's just not safe with that big drop off. So that has to be filled in or fenced off or something to make it safe. It's just not responsible to invite the public there. So if we could agree on at least getting that part of Lavender so the city lot can be accessed, then I see it as a separate issue what to do with the actual road end, because the way it is now, I don't think it's worth it to have all that open asphalt and gravel just for the sake of one parking spot. So that's my input, and I would like to thank you for doing this, the students, because what you have to realize, no matter what design you do, you will get ones that like it or don't. So don't worry about that. It's just that I think parking is so high on everyone's list that we really should address that before these are released to the public. So Harper's easy, and that's what I would suggest for Lavender. At least agree upon getting it safe so people can access that lot. Thank you.
Councillor Gusselbrecht.
Thank you. how serious is the need for a culvert on Harper? Because I've been down there various times and it's a swimming pool in the parking lot. So is that, and maybe staff can answer that. Is that something we need to do first in order to keep it dry there?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Gesselbrock. The Public Works Department actually fills in that area annually. It's an annual maintenance issue. I spoke with Director Spears about this, and he's not confident that it can actually be resolved given the grades and the fluctuation of the tide. He's not confident that we can actually drain the water from that location away. I asked the team to keep that catchment and drainage pipe on the plan, but really, I think you'd need some advice from your Director of Public Works prior to taking any action, because as I said, he's maintained it for many years now, and he did not identify that there was a feasible solution to that issue.
So, all right, thank you for that. I'd like to make an amendment to the motion. And the amendment, the wording follows the word accepted, actually before the semicolon, and it would read accepted and made available to the public prior to any vote by council.
Okay, do we have a seconder? I'd second that, but Councillor Proctor beat me. So seconded by Councillor Proctor. Discussion on the amendment. So through Councillor Gesselbrock.
Yeah, so simply,
oh, you're muted.
This is a concept design. Let's approve it at this stage. Let's put it out there. We've got a communications director, publicity. So let's get it out there on the website, out to the public. Let those who wish to weigh in, and let's see what the next step is. But I think we need to move ahead. It's been a lot of work done on this, and I would suggest that if the amendment is approved, that we get to a vote on the main motion.
And sorry, for the record, I don't have a main motion being on the floor. Perhaps I missed that.
Oh, we haven't actually moved the motion. That is very correct.
Okay, thank you. So,
okay, so let's,
what
I'll just make the
motion is on the
motion
floor?
that the concept design for Lavender Road and Harper Road beach ends be accepted, and further that the management policies for Lantzville Beach Road ends be approved. To have a seconder. Okay, seconded by Councillor Proctor. Councillor Gesselbrock, make your amendment.
My amendment is following the word accepted in the second line, the following words be inserted and made available to the public prior to any vote by council.
And that was seconded by Councillor Proctor. And just Director Coates, let me know when you're all caught up.
So the amendment motion that's on the floor is by, council amends the motion on the floor by adding the following after the word accepted and made available to the public prior to any vote by council.
Yes, that's correct. Okay. And
so just for clarity then, council, that's on the design, but then council is voting right now on approving the management policies.
A further amendment, or part of the first amendment that I'm making, is that we substitute the last word for the last word approved, accepted.
I'll second that. So we're two.
So that's all part of one amendment motion right now.
Oh, we're doing all as one.
We can't have two on the floor, so.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
it's one amendment motion. Okay.
Yes,
thanks.
that's right. Okay.
And that's again, okay with the seconder, Councillor Proctor. Okay. And through to Councillor Gusselbreck, any discussion on this?
So do I have the part of the
On
first
the amendment?
amendment with the word accepted instead of approved?
It'd be on
Just to make it,
parts.
just to make it consistent with the wording in the first part. Thank you.
And Councillor Proctor? Okay. All right, and through the rest of council, any debate, comments on the amendment? Okay, Councillor Savage?
Yes, well, while I will support this, I'm extremely reluctant to these going out to the public, with all due respect to the designers, just because of the concern there will be over parking. So I don't know what else we could put other than, well, I think we all share the same concern about parking, but I know it will be a big concern, especially with Harper, that pretty well most of the parking's gone. So thank you.
And you're voting on the amendment right now.
Yeah, so we're just looking at the amendment. So this is just for accepting. Okay. So I'm gonna
And
call,
I was just wanting for clarity for staff. I heard the discussion. So we would be making it available with this. I'll let you finish with your amendment first. Then we can clarify. Sorry.
okay. So I'm voting on the, we're voting on the amendment now. So I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. So now we're back to the main motion as amended. Director Coates, did you have a comment or a question or query?
I just want to clarify if there's a timeline. So it's that the concept designs for Lavender Road and Harper Road beach ends be accepted and made available to the public prior to any vote by council. And further, that the management policies for Lantzville Beach Road ends be accepted.
Yeah.
But just so I can give instruction, you know, to the consultant of, if we're putting something out, we should say how long or when you anticipate it going to council. Like, how long are you going to have? it
I
available to the
understand what
public?
you're driving at. Where how I'm looking at this is, you know, staff will basically post it and do some kind of media release on it, however you choose, and as soon as you can do it. I think if council wants to provide additional direction on providing timelines and so on, I think we should do that probably by a separate motion. But I think as this one stands, staff will just do the work when they can get to it. And I'm assuming it'll probably be sooner than later, probably not in 2022. I think you'll probably get to it soon. But yeah, we'd leave it in your hands. I don't know if council feels differently on that. No, okay. So at this point, and unless there's any further debate, I'm inclined to call the question. So on the motion as amended. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? So it's carried unanimously. Just through to council, what I would suggest is kind of the, you know, the George Cuff-ism of first heard deferred. So I would recommend if there's any follow-up motions, let's bring those forward to our next meeting of council. It would give us probably a little bit of time to actually digest this and come up with a plan moving forward. So, and if there seems to be duplicate motions coming in for our next agenda, I'll just contact the councillors individually to let them know. But I would suggest that that's how we approach it. And if not, I'll bring a motion myself. Councillor Proctor?
When we're finished this item, I'd like to request a 5-minute break, please.
Sure. So, so we are finished on this item unless there's any further input from council. Okay, Aaron, we'll take a 5-minute recess, so that'll take us to 8:35.
Yeah, as a point of order. Go on.
Okay, I mean, the meeting's not in session right now. There's a 5-minute recess.
Yeah, are you talking to me, Trudy?
Yes, you said something about a point of order.
Well, I must explain, it's just what a difficult evening. What I've done, you see, in order I can see the presentation, is I put on my other computer so I could watch that and talk through my other one, right? Because I couldn't see the presentation on my little computer here, so that's why there's a bit of a delay. So I'm a little bit lost, but thank you. Yeah, so I was just wondering, I thought we were going to vote on that motion. Suddenly everyone was gone, but anyway.
Okay, thank you. And although the meeting is in recess, it's still streaming live. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Director Coates, for some reason, I keep on losing audio on my system. I'm not sure why.
No idea at this end.
No idea at this end either.
Oh, hi, Ronald.
Hi.
Which computer are you using? Are you on the Surface Pro?
Yes.
But when you say the audio cuts out,
Sorry,
like,
maybe you could phone because we are still streaming live and recording.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
thank
for
you.
sure.
Okay, just recognizing it's 8:35 now. If everybody can come on back.
Quick question, Mayor Swain.
Yes. It's recording.
Yeah, it's a little disorienting for me, just so you know, because I have no video. I only have audio here. Yeah, you can see me. So may I ask, please, did we vote on that last motion yet, or did we take a break before we voted?
We did vote.
Okay. So we voted the motion and the amendment.
I believe so.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm calling this meeting back to order. Next on our agenda under 12 or new business, or 12A is mayor and council verbal updates. So I'll start on the left of my screen anyways. Councillor Wilson.
None.
Okay, and we're on clockwise from there. So Councillor Gesselbrack,
Nothing, thank you.
Councillor Proctor, Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. For my update, for some time, I've been very concerned about all the speeding construction traffic coming up Ald's Road and elsewhere, but Ald's is the worst with foothills traffic and so on. And another resident has complained on Phillip Road. So it appears there's some construction traffic also coming up there. So it seems the route for construction traffic, which would affect the fewest houses, is the highway to Ware and Ware to the foothills. So if I may, through chair to staff, I'm just wondering what are our options for encouraging construction traffic to follow such a route. For example, we could have a truck traffic route, or would speed bumps be appropriate for all? If I could ask staff that, please.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, not sure who's taking this question, but I really feel that question is best directed to the Director of Public Works, Fred Spears, who unfortunately is not in attendance at this meeting. Whenever you're talking about routing or traffic calming measures like speed bumps, you really need to consult with your Director of Public Works first.
Yeah, can I ask you about truck traffic routes? Have you had run-ins or experience with that? I know Nanaimo's got them. They've got set truck routes. So
Again, Your Worship, through you to council, that's truly, as Director Young said, it's a question that has to be posed to Director Spears. He has the authority under the bylaw to put in place. So if you don't mind, Councillor Savage, if you can pass that question on, we'll pass it on to.
Yeah, that sounds
Spears.
fine. Thank you. And just a follow-up question to staff, please, is when can we expect our first safety committee meeting, please?
That truly, Your
I'll
Worship.
answer that. Yeah. So through to Councillor Savage, basically when I call it. So at this point, I'm probably looking at calling one sooner than later because we are starting to get some courses around traffic calming concerns throughout the district. So I'll need to talk to staff further about when that is going to happen.
Yeah, thank you. And just to finish my update, we've had the speed sign there before, and I know the RCMP are stretched thin, so it's tough for them to always be on one particular road in Lantzville. So I am looking for solutions, but I thought I'd open the conversation now, and the update being I've heard from a number of residents that are concerned about the speeding and so on. So it's just a safety issue. So I thought I would raise it now, and hopefully we can get it solved sooner rather than later. Thank you.
And sorry, I was just going to jump in there too. You can always check out the traffic and parking regulation bylaw that's on our website. It has definition of the truck route and the weight of vehicles of when it applies. And certainly we always encourage people, if they're having problems with traffic, to report it to the RCMP, which is the agency that deals with speeding. That's not something that bylaw enforcement can deal with.
Thank you.
Okay, so for myself, I'm going to be sharing my screen this evening. I'm just going to move to doing that. Find. So.
Okay, so what I'm going to be sharing with council this evening with respect to my council update is yesterday there was the RDN meeting with the municipalities. Basically, it was opened up to all member municipalities, RDN area directors and so forth, and the board. And I did a presentation during the meeting, and I thought it would be appropriate this evening just to run through a brief version of that. I'll try and be as quick as I can, because what it does is it really highlights some of the accomplishments of our council to date. It's not all of them. It's not an exhaustive list. There has been a lot of things that have been moved by this council. And first, I would like to start off by simply just thanking our staff for the excellent work that they do and supporting all the work that we throw their way. So when we go through some of these strategic priorities and initiatives and accomplishments of council, it's really important to acknowledge that sure, we make the decisions on these items and sometimes catch the heat. However, it's the work is done by our staff, and for that I am thankful. So like I said, this is just a brief overview of what I went through yesterday. PowerPoint. So the first thing that's currently underway, and this is also for the benefit of residents as well, just to know what we have been up to, but for the village core improvement, clearly that's underway. It's something you can't miss if you drive through the village core. Obviously it's under construction, but some of the key, sorry, I just got to move some on my screen here. So some of the key things to make note here of it's taken many years for this to come to the place it is now. So, even when we look at when we initially adopted the village core improvement plan, that was finalized in 2014. So even the years it took to get to that stage and now where we're at, it's a long time coming. Bunch of things that have occurred over the years. We surveyed the road. We put money in the budget. That's something that's very historical for Lantzville. We've never really spent money in this kind of capacity outside of, parks and rec and so on. So it was a fairly significant move on this council's behalf to actually put some money into improving our village core. We've consulted with residents, engaged residents. We've come up with a design and that was through a consultant. We've applied for a grant, plus we had a few more steps in the mix, and we're hoping to have this thing completed for June of this year. So, the real emphasis of this project has been really about improving pedestrian safety and walkability through our village, but also to attract businesses and really increase the vitality of our downtown area. We've already seen a few businesses in recent times, take some serious or make some serious investments in our village. So we have the learning center, and then we also have the medical office, and even Cava's, the new restaurant. They've obviously invested money in their business. Oh, why is that not moving? Okay, there we go. In terms of governance, this is just something I highlighted. So this is something where what we've done in taking an external look at how we govern, and that's with our external relationships, and most notably with the NAWAs. We have an MOU underway, and this is going to be the framework from which both our local governments can work from. To date, it's not complete. However, I know staff is working hard with SNAWAs to get this complete and bring it to council, hopefully sooner than later. The other thing that's been a significant improvement for this council is just the joint council meetings that we have with SNAWAs, and where we can talk about common issues and the needs and wants of our individual communities. So I included this slide in the presentation because this is one of the initiatives that came out of the Economic Development Committee, and it just highlights an improvement that we've done in our village core. Also to highlight that we do have an economic development strategy here in Lantzville, the Beyond Business as Usual document. And then within that, obviously one of the other improvements which is underway is our village core improvement. So again, it's just highlighting some of the work that we're doing. One of the other strategic priorities that we've had in the past, and I'm not talking tonight about our the ones that will be released to the public in the next day or so, but I'm just talking about what we've done to date with the strategic planning and so forth. But one of our goals has always been to bring water to most residents in Lantzville. We know it's not possible to bring it to all corners of Lantzville because the cost to do that is too great. So, but what we are committed to is bringing it to the neighborhoods that have the most density and that actually need it. So, as a brief update, obviously we have the 2 water grants, which we're waiting for grant funding decisions from government. And then also with the recent development approval for the zoning and OCP and zoning amendments for the Clark Med development, that will result in extending the water line to one of those neighborhoods without water. So again, just highlighting some of our achievements. Another one that's been going on for a number of years is obviously Phase 3 sewer. This is the initiative, obviously, that extends beyond Phase 1 and Phase 2. But it's something that's, we got the funding that came through in 2017, so the previous council, and has carried forward into our council. It's a significant project, the magnitude of $8.6 million. And for Lantzville, that's big dollars. Maybe to the city in Nanaimo or a larger municipality, that's no big deal. But for us, that's a significant expenditure. Now we're in the final stage where we have 307 properties that will be hooking up. And the relevance to the RDN is this is basically results in a capital injection of $305,000. So money that goes back into the capital side of things with respect to the sewer. Moving on to transit. So although it has never really been identified as a strategic priority in Lantzville, it's definitely something we have taken into consideration through various motions of our council. So then the key is obviously trying to do an expansion of ours to the route number 11 or the Lantzville bus, and also the rerouting of the intercity bus, which is the one that basically travels Qualicum to Woodgrove, and trying to reroute that to yield some benefit to Lantzville. The next steps, and just so our council is aware, is we do have an RDN transit redevelopment plan that is underway now, and I'm happy to report that I'll be the chair of that subcommittee, and where we'll be looking at that redevelopment plan and bring it back to the Transit Select Committee, which then goes back to the board itself. So there'll be some exciting things there, but I think the real thing to talk about here is, within Lantzville, if we are serious about transit expansion, it's going to be really important that we try to raise the profile of this and within our community. So if we want ridership up, we need to tell people that this is what you need to do to try and get that ridership. We have to show that there is a definite desire to expand this service, because there's a lot of competition for the hours within a regional district. Another thing we've looked at is diversifying our tax base. Again, this hasn't really been identified as a strategic priority. However, District of Lantzville Council has initiated an OCP and zoning bylaw amendment to redesignate the Superior Road property. So that's the 26 hectares of property up on informally known as the G property, to facilitate light industrial and commercial development. As Lantzville Council is probably keenly aware, like a significant amount of our tax base is residential. It's at least 85+% of our tax base is residential, and that's not good for any municipality. We have to look at expanding our tax base so we collect more money from light industrial and commercial. And again, to our council, we have taken that initiative to definitely look at that possibility of expanding our tax base. So again, that's one of our initiatives, and that's definitely a worthwhile venture, because again, being reliant on residential tax base is not a good situation. And lastly, this is the one I always plug at the RDN, is our Foothills Parkland. Currently, we got the 731 acre land transfer. So back in January 2019, we got that transferred, and we have another 170 acres that's coming to us as a condition of the original development agreement. And ultimately, there's potential for more land as well. And as most people already know, in the context of how big is the park? Well, Stanley Park is about 1,000 acres. So it just provides some context in how much parkland we really have in the foothills. Within the strategic plan, or our strategic plan, the 2019 to 2023, we identified several priorities related to the foothills, and that's to negotiate the phase development agreement, which is currently underway. We all know that it's in the public domain. And with respect to achieving a partnership with the Regional District Nanaimo for the Foothills Park as a regional park. So that's something that's ongoing. Ultimately, it's better to have all the land at one time to deal with that, but we'll see what opportunities present themselves in the future with respect to with that. So ideally with the RDN, I would like to see all the land together before introducing the idea of a regional park. However, there may be opportunities to do something else. I have a little caveat on the bottom there. There will be future opportunities for public input on the parkland boundaries and amenities prior to the adoption of the phase development agreement of the Foothills project. So it's just important to realize that with the phase development agreement, nothing's going to be approved without having that public consultation. Just a couple of nice graphics that I shared. So obviously this is prior to some of the development going on in the foothills, but it also just shows the natural beauty in the background with respect to the regional park. Also highlighting some of the beautiful hiking trails and so on. So that's the top of Bald Mountain, looking out into the Sailor Sea, and ultimately, that's more of a strenuous hike, but there are lots of other easier to moderate hiking opportunities within the foothills. Lots of climbing opportunities. So if you're into rock climbing, regionally it's known as an area where you can go rock climbing. So it's a definite feature to the foothills. And obviously mountain biking and the connectivity to the Dumont lands, as well as to the Woodlot 1475. And ultimately, this is something that unfortunately has been kiboshed because of COVID, but potentially in 2021 to 2022, having tours and bringing people out from the RDN and also from our member municipalities to actually have a look at why the foothills would be such a fantastic regional park, in addition to the inventory that currently is within the regional district in Nanaimo. So hopefully that will happen maybe later this year, early 2022. But just again, I just wanted to share this with council because again, it just outlines some of the successes that we've had, and again, just some. We've had many, but and also just some of the strategic priorities moving forward, especially with the RDN. So thank you for listening to that, and I will stop my share. And other than that, it looks like the RDN will probably be scheduled another one of these meetings with the municipalities, and again, it's really just to try and bring all elected officials within the region together, so we have an idea of what we're doing in each other's backyards, and hopefully we can have some opportunities for collaboration around various initiatives. Okay, so that's my longer than usual update, but there you have it. So moving on into 12B, we have the appointment of interim director of financial services. I'll just make the motion that Kathleen Day be appointed as the interim director of financial services for the district of Lantzville. Do I have a seconder to that? So second by Councillor Proctor. Any discussion? So for myself, none. Through to Councillor Proctor, none. And through the rest of the council. Okay, hearing none, I will move to calling the question. So all those in favor, and that's carried unanimously. And welcome, Ms. Day. And moving on to the appointment of the Deputy Director of Financial Services, I'll just make the motion that Kathy Nugent be appointed as the Deputy Director of Financial Services for the District of Lantzville. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Gesselbrock. Any discussion on this item? Okay, so through to the seconder, Councillor Gesselbrock.
None. And okay, now we have Councillor Savage. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just to be consistent with my position earlier in the meeting and my position at other meetings, including the budget meeting, I'll be opposing this. And it's absolutely no reflection on the person that's being hired. I'm sure they're great. I just spoke before about the keeping costs under control and being commensurate with population increase. So that's the reason I'll be opposing this. Thank you.
Any additional speakers? Okay, hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor and opposed? Noting that Councillor Savage is opposed, the appointment carries. That takes us on to item D. So we have the flood construction level exemption for 6998 Straight Road. Someone prepared to make that motion? Unless you want to hear my voice. Okay, Councillor Gesselbrecht, you can go ahead.
That the request to exempt a proposed 47 meter squared addition to the existing house on 6998 Straight Road from the floodplain regulations and zoning bylaw number 180/2020 is advisable and consistent with the provincial flood hazard area land use management guidelines. And further, that pursuant to section 524(7) of the Local Government Act, an exemption from the floodplain regulations and zoning bylaw number 180/2020 be granted to Anthony Harris and Leslie Harris for a 47 meter squared addition to the existing house on 6998 Straight Road, subject to registration of a covenant on the title of the subject property with a save harmless clause in favor of the District of Lantzville.
And seconded by Councillor Proctor. Discussion on the motion. So Councillor Gesselbrecht and then Councillor Proctor.
I've read the staff report. Staff is in favor of this. I see no reason to question staff's reasons for recommending it. Thank you.
And through Councillor Proctor. Okay. And through the rest of the council. Okay, Councillor Savage.
Yes, this has come up before, and the essence of it is if the owners take responsibility for any damage done by flooding, then that's the way it's worked before, and it's just fine. And for other owners, they've done it because it's in keeping with the style of their house, and they're already at a certain level, so their additions maintain that level, even though they may be not in keeping with flood level recommendations. And with this particular house, it's an absolutely beautiful house. To me, it's one of the icons of Lantzville. It's the gorgeous log style house. And I think their idea is that even though the floodplain may recommend they be higher, they're taking responsibility for it. So if they're adding on to their house, I'm quite sure it'll be a beautiful addition at the same level they currently have. And that's the essence of this issue. So for me, each and every time, if people take responsibility for additions which are below what the recommended floodplain level is, I would support it because they're taking the responsibility. So I'll certainly be supporting this, and I look forward to how their additions will look, the style, and so on. So thank you.
Okay, any additional speakers? Okay, hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor?
Okay, it's carried unanimously. Moving on to item E, so we have a leak adjustment request, utility account 004-097191200-000 for 7360 Lantzville Road. I'll just make the motion that the request for adjustment to utility account number 00. Oh, sorry, that's not the one I want to read. Yeah, so I'm sorry that the request for the leak adjustment to utility account number 004-097191200 for 7360 Lantzville Road be authorized in an amount of $121.38 in contravention of water system bylaw number 140. The seconder to that, seconded by Councillor, I think, Proctor. Speaking to the motion, I have nothing to add, so through to Councillor Proctor as the seconder. Okay, nothing through the rest of council. Okay, hearing none, I will simply move to calling the question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. It takes us on to item F. So we have the official community plan development permit area 2 amendment. So Councillor Proctor, you have a recommendation, so I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. My recommendation is that staff initiate the process to amend the official community plan development permit area number 2 to include areas around eagle nests and blue heron nests, and further, that the funding to hire a consultant to inventory, identify, and map known eagle and blue heron nests be considered in the 2022 financial planning process through the submission of a special request form.
Yeah, that was seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. It's come to my attention that while heron nests are protected by the province, actually, so if I had a heron nesting in a tree in my yard, I couldn't cut the tree down without incurring a huge provincial fine. But the heron nests can be disturbed in a lot of ways other than cutting down the one tree that they're nesting in. Near my house, there's a known nesting site between Lantzville Road and Lynn. There at one time were quite a few nests there. And since the area isn't protected, that property owner could actually go in and cut all the trees down around the heron nests while they're nesting. And that would disturb the herons so much that they would desert their nests. And we had some nests this year deserted in upper Lantzville. And we lost, the herons left, the eggs were destroyed, because if we don't have some protection for the area around the nests, people could start construction, for instance, or that cause a disturbance. We have some extremely proactive Lantzville citizens that have contracted a biologist report that they've told me they will be receiving within about a week and a half, that they will forward on to all of us to use in consideration for how we should be protecting the nest and the grounds around it. I think that the recommendations would be things concerning noise would disrupt the nests, and particularly during nesting season. So if you live next door to a house, for instance, that had a heron nest, you couldn't do something really loud during a few weeks of the nesting season. And through the permitting process, we would be able to control that if we had the OC change so that we protect the area around the nest. To me, you know, I'm a retired biology teacher. This is something that's really near and dear to my heart. And I think it's an important step for us to take. Thank you.
And through to Councillor Wilson as the seconder.
No, I just agree. I'm fully aware of what happened in Upper Lantzville, and I see the herons all the time coming up from the marsh, and we enjoy watching them. And I was not aware as to how few heron nests we actually have on Vancouver Island. So I think that yeah, this is an important thing that we should take a lot of pride in Lantzville.
Okay, additional speakers. I have a couple comments, but I'll wait.
Okay, hearing none. And Councillor Savage, are you still with us? I don't know what happened.
I'm having more difficulty. You can
Just
hear
send
me.
an IT person to your house.
Yeah, you please go first, and I will speak after you, if I may. Thank you.
Sure, that's fine. So for myself, yeah, I can totally support this. In terms of the initiating the process to amend the OCP, maybe through to Councillor Proctor, were you hoping that would be done this year, or
is this for 2022? I'm just kind of unclear.
It's a lengthy process and staff would initiate it now. I'm sorry, I'm just distracted by the graphics. I'm sorry, I just won't focus on the screen. They would initiate it now, but we can't change the OCP without a map. We need a map, so actually it wouldn't be finished until 2022. We need to know where the heron nests are, so that we can control that through development permitting. And it would be best if, I suggested I could walk around and write them all on a map, but I think we need to hire somebody who specializes in that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you for that. And perhaps you may have the answer to my next question. Oh, sorry. Okay, I thought I was hearing something, but
just in terms of the noise, are there no provincial regulations around creating noise around these sites? So even though you can't cut down a tree, you can start up a chainsaw beside the tree and cut firewood or just psych them out and make the noise and try and make them fly away. Like, are there any provincial regulations on?
I'm not clear on that, and that would be outlined in this biologist report.
Okay, sure, thank you. Yeah, because when I first read this, I'm like, yeah, this is a great initiative. My only concern is really in the interim is trying to provide communication or out to residents. So if we have identified there's some areas within Lantzville where there are some blue heron nests, even eagle nests, to provide some information to the residents in that, that time where they could be nesting, and let them know, and just say, this is a sensitive time, and whether we just target mail outs to those specific neighborhoods, and then we also couple that with the social media stuff and also the stuff on our own website, but just to try and do a media blitz on those areas, because even if all this stuff goes through, you're still going to have these people going out and, oh, it's a lovely Sunday afternoon, I'm going to go cut some firewood and fire up the chainsaw or whatever else they're going to do, and that's not necessarily going to be covered in the development permit applications and so on. But yeah, that was my only, and perhaps maybe not this meeting, but next meeting, through to Councilor Proctor, if you came with a motion, just even with respect to doing some kind of communication strategy motion.
I could do that for the next meeting. Sure.
I think that would be kind of the catch-all, because you can have all the regulation you want, but you're still going to have people that are going to go ahead and do whatever they're going to do. And if you make it more socially unacceptable, to basically have these behaviors around noise and wildlife, and I don't know, it's like feeding bears, who does that, right? But people still do. So anyways, Councillor Proctor, I saw your hand go back up.
Well, it was my understanding although Director Young may want to speak to this, that he's waiting for some information from the provincial biologist on what sort of communication we send. And yes, I will come with a motion to the next meeting to make sure that information gets, well spread around Lantzville so that everybody knows.
Yeah. And for myself, again, this is definitely a worthwhile motion. Anything to preserve the ecology of our area is a worthwhile endeavor. I've walked that area in Upper Lantzville with those residents at the recent abandoning of the nests and so on. And yeah, it's a shame. And I think if people actually knew, the consequences of their actions, of whatever activity went on up there has led to this, it probably think otherwise. Because, I think most residents in Lantzville share that common thread, for the love of natural environment and so on. We read about it all the time. So, and it's reflected through our OCP and so on. So anyways, those are my thoughts. Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. There's a few tie-ins here. One is the Timber West property, gave us notice on a Friday afternoon. They were beginning to log an area on Monday morning, and included in that area was an environmentally sensitive area in the OCP. And apparently, I don't quite recall the reason, but it was something to do with not having jurisdiction over forestry lands in the sense that they would be more under provincial jurisdiction. But at any rate, there's also the woodlot, and I'll be asking staff a question in a moment about some incident, but or maybe I'll ask now to find out what happened. But through chair to staff, please, can you enlighten me what happened here? We had a letter from a resident to staff and council about some incident, but I didn't know what it was. And could you say what happened, please, if this is the impetus of this motion? Thank you.
Through the mayor to Councillor Savage, staff do not have anything to add to this. The email from the individual provided some information on destruction of heron eggs, allegedly. Staff have not been able to confirm that.
And why were you implicated in this directing? I didn't understand anything. Was there some construction going on beside these nests, and where were they located, please?
Through the mayor to Councillor Savage, we don't have that information.
Well, I'll
Oh,
ask.
sorry, Councillor Savage, I'm just curious, like, what are you referencing? What?
We got a letter from a resident about some, it seemed to refer to some heron nests, and I thought this motion was related to that, so perhaps it's not. I couldn't understand the letter, what they were referring to. It was some construction related to herons and heron nests, so.
Yeah, I think all the members of council have read that letter, and it just, again, it's,
I think in terms of the motion that's in front of us, it's kind of the digressing the conversation. So I think we're probably best just to move past the letter and stay on the motion.
So it would, my preference would be, this would be an open-ended question if we're going to the expense of having a consultant and so on. And that question would be, what extra items should be included in a review of our environmental development, our DPA #2, I believe it is, development permit area, and allow residents to have input on it. So it's not just one item. If we're amending the OCP, there might be other environmental items that might be of concern, be it bear caves, owl habitat, endangered species, and so on. So my preference would be to not include this, not limit this just to this one thing. But the reason I bring this up as to what the incident was, if it's on a woodlot or Timber West, then my point being the OCP would not necessarily govern such places. Through, again, through chair to staff, please, would an OCP amendment governing heron nests apply to woodlot or forestry lands such as Timber West or timberlands, or would they provincial legislation take precedent?
Through the mayor to Councillor Savage, no, our development permit area guidelines would not apply to crown lands or private managed forest lands, so Timber West or island timberlands. But the issue with heron nests is not the actual protection of the tree and the nest itself. That's already protected under the Wildlife Act. The issue is development that occurs within a radius around those nest trees. So, and it's upwards of 300 meters. So there's areas outside of the Crown Woodlot in the Winds neighborhood where development might be occurring that we do have control over, and we can establish or implement conditions in relation to activity that occurs outside of the Crown Woodlot lawfully.
All right, so that's what I was driving at. You see, I'm probably the only one that's not quite aware of this incident, so I didn't mean that you were involved in it. All I meant was you might know about it. That's all I meant. So if it's on the woodlot, then what you're saying, Director Young, is that development outside of the woodlot that might affect things within the woodlot, this would be helpful towards, is that what you're saying? Or at least we'd have control over it, I mean?
Yeah, that's right. So in this case, the rookery, the heron rookery, is on Crown lands. So we have no control over what happens on those Crown lands. But within 300 meters, for example, of that rookery that's outside the woodlot, we would have control over those activities and could establish conditions related to that development.
Right, okay, well, that's all I was driving at. Thank you. So
through Councillor Savage, I'm gonna allow Councillor Gesselbrecht, as he hasn't spoken to this, and then we'll come back to you, Councillor Proctor. So go ahead, Councillor Gesselbrecht.
Let's call the question, but I'd certainly like to hear from Councillor Proctor.
Yeah, okay, so go ahead, Councillor Proctor.
We were sent a plethora of reports from provincial biologists. They went to all of council, and we have identified heron nests on private land between Lynn and Lantzwood, off of Huddlestone Road and up on Bayview Drive. So most of the identified heron nests and the way the province knows is that people that live around them and see them report them, so that they're put on this provincial list because they are almost endangered. I forget the term for what you're called when you're like two herons away from being in there. Yeah. So we have heron, and there may be more that aren't identified by the province or that people would let the district know about. So most of the heron nests that I know of are on private land that are controlled by our OCP. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So unless there's new information, I will be calling the question. So
yeah, I have an amendment I'd like to make, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So the reason for this, as I said, is that I'm looking to expand this to anything the consultant might find, not just heron nests. So after the word blue heron nests, I would like to insert and all other environmental concerns identified by the consultant, not addressed by the official community plan.
Okay, do we have a seconder to the amendment? Okay, so due to a lack of seconder, then Director Coates? I know time is marching on.
It's okay. Thank you.
Take a bloody vote. Oops.
Okay. So yeah, so I'm going to be moving to calling the question. You know, when the amendment is asked for, I do have to entertain the amendment, and but that failed. So I'm going to be calling the question. So all those in favor, and then opposed. Okay, so that's carried unanimously, and that takes us to introduction of late items. Any late items to be introduced? Okay, seeing none, and any notices of motion? Okay, hearing none, and any, we don't have public clarification. So we have made it through our agenda before the bells. So I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.